Welcome to the Cycle Coach Show.
Empowering conversations on menstrual cycle coaching.
We're your hosts, Claire Baker
and Lauren Olivia Hughes. Welcome to the Cycle Coach Show. This is Lauren, and I'm very excited to be introducing part 2 of the amazing conversation between my co-host, Claire Baker, and the wonderful and wise Charlotte Pointeaux. If you haven't listened to part 1 yet, click back to a couple episodes ago. They had an amazing conversation around how they both created sustainable, profitable, highly attractive businesses in the menstrual realms, how they niched down, how they found their clients, how they created systems and rhythms in their day. So they avoided that scary burnout, which I took so many notes. It was amazing. Part 2 of the conversation is more around answering questions from our community over at Cycle Coach School on Instagram. We asked some of our alumni as well as current students and just audience in general if they had questions for these two amazing women, and they did not disappoint. In this episode, they cover what new businesses should prioritize. So that includes conversations around email lists and money, how to budget, how to know when to take that full-time leap, what to use social media for, how to incorporate more softness and slow days into your week. And yeah, just a lot of really beautiful insights. Once again, a brilliant conversation from these two, and I can't wait for you to hear it. If you aren't familiar with Charlotte, please do check her out on Instagram and online at charlottepointeaux.com. We will have all of her information in the show notes below. But for now, please enjoy part 2 of their incredible conversation. I'm a little sad I wasn't there. Maybe next time. Enjoy.
All right, we've got some really great questions here, so let's jump into them. A question that I think is a great place to start is the top 3 areas that we would recommend somebody focus on when starting to build their business. First thing that comes to mind for me is always an email list. I feel like I could die on that hill. It's definitely one that I would like to include in the 3. What springs to mind for you?
Such a good question. I get asked this a lot, and I think people have a belief that you need to have a brand, social media, and a website. I reckon if you put that out into the world and ask that question, I reckon they would come up pretty high up in there, as well as email. And I really don't feel like those 3 things are actually it. I would not suggest your first 3 things to be a website. Like, social media can be really powerful and helpful, but I wouldn't even suggest it was the very first thing, you do. And I think, branding can wait until you actually know what you're here to offer. So my suggestion would be, what are you offering? Like, what's your core medicine you're offering, your passion? Like we've had this chat about what, mine is and why I'm doing what I do and what I'm not doing. Like, what is it for you? Like, really getting clear on, who you're here to serve. So, that ideal client piece of work is part of it as well. But what is it? What is it you're here to offer? What is the transformation you're supporting people with? And how are you doing that? I think clarifying that, because everything else will come from that. And yeah, understanding who you're here to support deeply, really getting a sense of, the challenges they're moving through, the things they've tried already, what they're really looking for help with, and then how you can, how you marry these 2 things up. And I think email, I agree, is really important. And it's so interesting because, I've got a relatively small email list. I guess maybe it's in comparison to, I know certainly to you and, people who, like, I guess high profile peeps. But it's regardless being something that I've nurtured ever since the start of my business. And I really feel like people overlook this and they go for the social media option instead. And I think, yes, you can use your social media to draw people into your email, but I think nurturing your email list, like sharing with them, letting them know, you know, what you're doing, why you're doing it, how they can work with you, all of those things, like staying connected, you're drawing people closer to you and letting them into your world. I think it's an oldie but an essential kind of thing. Is there anything else? Nothing else really springs to mind at the moment.
Yeah, I would add money. I would add finances. I would add getting your systems in place so that when you start making money, you have somewhere to put it, you have some organization around it, and some simple education on it, because having your own business really does require you to be pretty solid with money, and that is an ongoing journey. It's not something that you just figure out and then that's it, because business ebbs and flows, and you're going to have seasons with lots of cash flow and others where it's quieter. There's going to be seasons where you really need to be more mindful of expenses and overheads. And like we said earlier, some offerings are more expensive to put out. You're going to have greater overheads and others will be more minimal. So knowing how much tax you need to pay so that doesn't creep up on you at tax time, and feeling great about making money and then reinvesting that money and paying yourself, getting these systems in place early on, I think is wise. I had all of my bookkeeping set up for me really early on by somebody. A bookkeeper came and just helped me set it all up so that at least I knew the very basics when it came to reconciling transactions and putting things in different places. And then that's become a little more sophisticated over the years as my business has grown. But I'm really glad I wasn't trying to learn this stuff, years down the line and then realizing I was in loads of debt to the tax office, for example, or like I hadn't, paid myself at all. Like I learned how to do that pretty quickly, and it definitely has grown. So I would say, as we're talking, I can really hear like offering for sure, getting an offering in place, and that then asks us, who is this for? Who do we want to work with? Getting that client avatar down and a bit of an idea, about who you're speaking to and what it is that you're offering, tuning into what brings you alive, crafting your offerings, and then sharing them. And this is something I'm really recently remembering, is just what a big part of this job actually is talking about it. And we could call this marketing or we could call it selling. It's both of those things. And it's also just preaching and sharing our message and telling people about what it is that we're so passionate about and what it is that we offer, and letting them know. I think this is something that actually we need to be doing all of the time, and learning some of those skills early on is great, and picking something to begin with. And I would always choose an email list to begin with, because those emails are yours. When you have followers on a social media account, they don't belong to you at any point in time. Meta could, or whatever platform we're using, could choose to shut down and then it's all gone. Whereas when we have an email database, these are humans who have said to you, hey, I want to hear from you. I'm really interested. Send updates to my inbox. I want to know what's going on and I want to be a part of it. And I feel like that is a far greater measure of trust and commitment and interest than just simply following someone on social media, because they're giving you access to their inbox. They're saying, yeah, email me, I want to know. There's an intimacy there and a trust that I think is really powerful. And, the facts still tell us, the data still tells us that email is still really powerful. I think it's important to ignore some of the trend-based marketing that says like email's dead or Instagram's dead or whatever platform is dead, because none of them are dead. They're all still working for someone out there. And so you just have to pick something, just pick one and start there. So at the very beginning, I would say email, and then certainly pick a social media platform and start to play with that as well. And then get your money in check. They will be the three things that I would say: offering, learning how to talk about what it is that you do, and then finances.
Just really want to put my hands up, yes, girlfriend, thank you for saying money, because and is so crucial for all of the reasons that you said, and it also helps you to price your work, so you know what you need to make and what that's a really important part of putting your offering together as well. But that money piece, I think we could have like a whole epic long conversation about the power of profit first, which is a methodology for ensuring that you're taking your profit first and covering your expenses, and you're growing a legit sustainable business, and not just not managing your finances. Something that I'd heard about and kind of didn't really do much with until you brought it back around, and you're like, I'm doing this, and got kind of a group of us actually on board. And it's been really powerful because this is the difference between doing something that is, essentially a side hobby, something that, even if you're in it full time, it's not a business if you're not actually making sustainable money, if you can't take an income from it, if, you're not covering your bills, if you're not managing your money, right, you actually don't have a business. So that is so important, and I think it's so easy to overlook or kind of ignore. And I think I kind of did it first, I think because I didn't necessarily need to do it for money as such straight away, but over time it's been something I have got more serious, take fully seriously now, and I wish that I had got more literacy around it at the start. My husband's a bookkeeper. He's helped me do a lot of that, and perhaps that's where I was leaking my power and outsourcing some of that instead of really claiming it. And the more I've claimed this sovereignty around it, and really sort of perceive myself as like the CEO of my business, I run a better business, I make more money, it's more everything just works better, it's more sustainable, and I'm making an actual income for sure that I know what I'm making, and I can forecast what I'm making, and all of those tools that we, are measures that we can get out of managing money properly. So I'm really glad you mentioned that.
Yeah, it's crucial. It's crucial. And that leads into the next question, which is around finances and when to take the leap. So there's a question here that asks, how do I decide whether to go all in on this work and leave my current job and leave my salary, my income, especially when faced with a head versus heart dilemma, which is interesting to speak to. And then a couple of other questions that are similar, like I've got, at the moment it's this kind of side job that I've got alongside my other place of work. When do I know, like when's that moment that I take that leap? What does that look like? How would you answer that?
I think if you're in the position where you have a job and you have an income and it's solid and it's guaranteed, even if it's really busy and demanding and you feel like you don't have time to really pour into this business, and there's a sense of frustration, and you really want to be doing what really lights you up and, following your purpose essentially, and leaving this job behind, I would really recommend gently doing that. I wouldn't recommend just leaping, because I think that setting up a successful, thriving business isn't an overnight thing, despite what, you might see or perceive to be seeing. I think that actually things take time to trial and error and refine and find your people and find your sweet spot to be growing enough offerings that, you've got your recurring revenue, so you're not living in like a boom and bust cycle, which isn't going to support you if it's your sole income. I would suggest really seeing that this is a season where you're going to have to put the hours in and just dedicate some time around your day job to set up the foundations, to do it right from the start, to get really serious about, okay, what's this going to look like? What's this going to need? What am I going to offer? Start, the email list, craft your offers, start talking about it, build your profile, do, the social media work, draw people in and get, build it up, because I think that this can take time to do before we start seeing the real money coming in as well. And so I think just holding the fact that you're in a season and that this will pass, but it requires perseverance. We've just got to be in it and go for it. And then I think as you get traction, you don't have to just quit your job. Like, can you drop down to 4 days and then 3 days? You'll find a way of gently stepping out of one and stepping into another. I've done this in the past. So before I had kids, I had a different business. I used to make cakes and cupcakes and do weddings and things like that. And it was never a full-time job for me, but I definitely had this experience of like having, like it was asking more of me than what I could fit around a job. And so I did start to pull back in my day job after I got to a certain point. But for quite a long time, I was busting my balls. And I think, you know, like when we're in this real kind of cyclical space, when we're really all about, you know, honoring our capacity, honoring our cycle, we can resist working hard or kind of be like, well, I don't really want to do that. That's not what it's about. But I ultimately think that when we're in business, when we're starting off, we do have to, it's not about like killing yourself and burning out, but we do have to be in it. We have to be really intentional with our time and our energy, and don't just do the busy work, do the income generating work. Be specific where you're going to put your intention and your energy and what you're going to prioritize. Be really smart about that, but it does require work. And unless you're in a position where maybe you've got a partner who is earning sufficient where you can step out of your own day job, and that's awesome. And absolutely, if you've got that gift and that works for you and your partner and, you know, all of the things, beautiful. That might be the way to go. So you can really just jump in. And I did do more of that with this business. I had children. It wasn't like I was, you know, a lady of leisure. I had side jobs. I was doing contracting work as well. I'd stepped out of my day job into a maternity leave, and I decided I didn't want to go back to my job after that maternity leave. So I did what I could, knowing I had some maternity leave money. I had my side contracting job, which gave me like a good amount. And my husband had really made the commitment to supporting me in a season of training and growing my business, where I'd supported him previously to retrain and study and step out of his work entirely while I was the main income earner. So it's going to look like, it's going to be different for everybody. But I think, let's be real. Let's look at the numbers. What do you need to afford your life, your lifestyle? What do you desire to have? What's your point of, okay, I can make this work and feel safe and secure in all of this, and not just gonna put yourself in a really difficult situation. You do your better work when you can be really intentional and realistic and planned and strategic. And so get the help that you need to make this happen, whether that is learning and support with setting up your business, whether it's more support at home for you to have this and with your family, if you have one, that you are going to be putting, you know, your time and energy into this for this season. Give yourself some boundaries around it so that, you know, you're not floundering or going to be in this for too long. Like, is there going to be a point where you're going to assess this again and see where you're at and see what needs renegotiating? Give yourself grace, give yourself space, give yourself time, but be really intentional about it, would be my advice.
So good. I'm really hearing something that I think is important to remember, is that it doesn't have to be head versus heart. Actually, it really should be both. I really think we need to, of course, listen to our heart, and that might, in this question, be the menstrual cycle coaching business or the self-employment. That's where your heart really is. And maybe your head is saying, but I get this salary each month and we could really use this money to help pay for the mortgage and the kids' school. And both of those things are really important, actually. And so we do need to also think with our heads and look at the numbers, and, like you say, address how much we need to live, how much we really want to be paying ourselves. I think it's wise to have some savings that are there as a buffer for you, so that if you do decide to leave your salaried employment or full-time work, then you've got some money to see you through that transition period where you might be making a little bit less in your business. For me, I got myself to a place where I was earning some passive income in my business, so it wasn't just me doing one-to-one work and swapping hours for dollars. It was also me selling ebooks and an audiobook. And once I had that income that I could see, right, that's coming in now every month, and that's a bit of money that I'm making that doesn't require my time anymore, then that gave me the confidence to then leave, but I transitioned from 5 days to 4 days to 3 days. It took me about 18 months of moving down that way. And sometimes I look back and think I could have been longer. I could have given myself a little bit more, but I didn't have too many financial commitments at that point in time. My rent was pretty cheap. I chose to live very frugally for a couple of years. I didn't buy new clothes. I didn't take holidays. I missed friends' weddings. There were so many things that I do now that I wasn't doing for that couple of years because I chose not to, and I chose to really commit to making this business work. So it's also really important to look at the areas of your life where you might need to pull back. If you want to make this work, then there might be some things that also need to go, whether that's time commitments or financial commitments, energetic commitments. It takes, like you say, a lot of energy and work to make a business happen, particularly building that momentum at the beginning. And it can be fun and it will be rewarding, but as you said, be intentional with it. Don't burn yourself out, but appreciate that it's going to take some fire for sure.
I love that.
Should I hire a professional to help with branding, photography, copywriting, marketing, website building? What do you think?
I invested in some photography because I think photos are just incredible. I think they're really powerful. They know how to capture your essence and like some of your magic and just the energy that you bring. I think they're a really powerful asset to have in your business, that if you spend some money on photos, like I use my photos again and again and again, and in all the ways. I use them on my website, my social media. I use them in my branding. I use them when I create course collateral. When somebody asks me for a headshot for like a little, promoting like this podcast, for example. I use them in so many ways, and I've used them again and again, even ones that are a bit old. I still just don't think there's anything wrong with that. I'm just investing in new photography now, and I just think that that is an area that can be really powerful to actually spend the money on good photos. Like you can tell the difference between, iPhone and professional, and I just think that they can be your branding until you get professional branding done. So my perspective, and this is personal, my experience with branding is that I think I did my own for a while using Canva. Wonderful Canva. Canva's, it's brilliant. It's full of templates. If you're not using it, you just need to be on it. I use it all the time for everything. And the reason why I didn't invest in full-scale professional branding, which cost quite a lot of money, like a few $1,000s, until I was a few years into business, was because I had changed my niche a few times. And I hadn't really stepped fully into my power, in really owning who I am and exactly what I do, and being really unafraid and unapologetic about who I am and what I do, basically. Finally approached somebody to do my professional branding, and they said to me how many times they said they actually don't like working with coaches because we change our mind, because we adapt in the ways that I just described. And she said it was really frustrating to work with someone when they didn't really know. And the years that I had been working in my business gave me a chance to really know my ideal client, really know my energy, really know what I do and how I do it and what makes me me and what my business values are and all of the things that a good brand strategist will do. I didn't just get a logo made, which you can make a logo, like I said, easy on Canva. Full branding is, all of the assets and the icons and the font, and there's a lot to it. Brand guidelines, like a full document on how to use all of these things, how to speak, like what your brand voice is, what your golden thread is that weaves together all of your work. And we could nut that out because I had this clarity and experience of doing my work, basically. I do think when you're starting out, that can be quite hard to land and it can change a bit. So I would actually spend time really feeling into, instead of going, which colors shall I work with? Yes, that's great, but do the deeper work, ask those deeper questions. You can even Google them, how do I work out what my brand voice is or my brand style? Or, Just spend some time with, if you have a business coach, like clarifying some of these things, that can really help you discern what your brand is, and then create a brand that reflects that, rather than just going for something that's pretty. I changed this so many times and I wasted ages, and anytime I felt hesitant in showing up in my business, I would waste my life on Canva, and I would change my templates and I would change this, la la la. So I feel like professional help with branding can obviously mean that you've got templates. It can give you something that you just rinse and repeat over and over. But to really do your branding effectively, if you're going to invest in it, you really want to have that deeper sense of what it is you're really about, and be sure that that's it. Even if you then have sub offers that might ebb and flow, you've got that brand that's overarching. I hired a copywriting coach when I was starting out to help me write a sales page. I had no idea how to do such a thing, and it was great. But what happened was they wrote me this beautiful sales page, and then I wanted to just change it. And then I needed to change it because my work changed, as I just described. But I still learned, the bones of the flow of a sales page. So, it's like structuring an essay, your beginning, middle, and ending, and all of the sections, etc. But I think that when you're starting off, I wouldn't advise doing that. I would, have a look at some people's work you admire, and obviously I'm absolutely not talking about plagiarizing, copying in any sense. But just get a flow for, the structure of these things. I think that could be helpful. And website building, I've always done my own. I'm quite tech savvy. I started off with like a Weebly, and then I used Wix, and now I use WordPress. I had to have help with WordPress because I didn't get it, but I didn't get that website done until I really needed something big and powerful to house. I've got a lot of content on my website, and I really wanted that branding to come through, and it wasn't possible to do it on these Wix and Weebly websites, which are very much drag and drop template based. But they served me for years, and they're incredibly powerful, very simple. You need no technology whatsoever, skills that is, to build that. And I would just recommend, if you want to have a website, just DIY it for now. It's, again, not about wasting your life on it, but you can just create something, because ultimately you just want a home on the internet where you can direct people to join your newsletter list, or to receive a freebie, or just to discover who you are. But it doesn't need to be complex until maybe it does need to be a bit more built out, but you really don't need that to have a successful business. And I think that given what the cost of website build services cost, if I'd have invested in that at the start, it would have taken me ages to recoup that. So yeah, that's my sense. It's feel into what you actually need to get going. I don't think you actually need any of these things to get started. I do think photography is powerful, but I do think the rest of it, you can really kind of just DIY and learn, because I think through DIYing all of those, I learned so much about, doing my own copywriting, really helped me to feel into, what am I actually offering? What is coaching? What is my style of coaching? What are people feeling and needing support with and experiencing and getting out of it? I think the process of building out and doing these things myself taught me so much about my business. Yeah, that feels really true for me. I think even if you've got the money, don't rush into investing in those things. I think that feels true. How about you?
I agree. I agree with photography. I think that a great photo goes a long way. And even in the age of video, I still think that rings true. You only need a few really great photos that capture who you are, the essence of your brand. They can be used on your website and your social media, like you say, for bio pics. And it does capture an element of, professionalism that I think is also really important when setting up a business. So you can still share the like pics from your iPhone on your social media, stories, things like that. But I do think having a set of really beautiful photos is great. Saying that, to start with, I did start with a friend with a great camera out in a park taking some photos of me to begin. So, you can always ask someone who's great at taking photos. I mean, iPhones have come a long way since I first started. A great quality set of photos is brilliant. I think it's a risk to start outsourcing social media and marketing until your brand is pretty tight. And I don't even know if I would say I am even there yet. Like, you need to be able to tell, someone else needs to be able to know exactly the tone that you might write with, and the words that you use, the language, the feel and essence of your business isn't something that's easily actually replicated by somebody else. So unless you have got solid brand guidelines, I would be mindful of outsourcing those things too soon. And I know that we can all feel a bit frustrated with social media at times, but again, if we're just reframing it as like, you're just telling people what you're passionate about, and you're just sharing your story and letting people know what's going on. Those are the things that actually I think we do need to be doing. And as you said, there's a lot of value in doing it because it helps us to refine who we're talking to, what we're talking about. Often, we need time to really get clear on what it is. What is this thing that we're creating, this business, this entity that's something beyond us? So yeah, things like copywriting and marketing, it's worth learning some skills in. I also worked with a copywriter early on who helped me to learn how to structure a page. These days, I honestly think AI is such an incredible tool. Like, go into ChatGPT and pop a bunch of text and ask it to help it to build a structure for a sales page for you, or to give some examples. Or even when it comes to branding, ask ChatGPT to provide you with 5 questions to help you get clear on your branding for an offering or for your whole business. Like, there are so many free resources that we have to get clear on these aspects of our business. So I would say, that, and with website building, I had a DIY website for 7 years before I paid someone to help me out with my website and build one for me. And I've still not got a logo for Claire Baker. I've never had a logo, and I still don't have one. So, it's not essential at all. It's a nice to have.
Totally.
Yeah. So what are some of the ways that we can market our offerings and tell people about them without using social media? Because this is it can be a point of tension for a lot of people. How do you share your work without using social media?
I really feel called to just say first that if you really feel strongly that you don't like social media, I want to ask why. Is it because you feel like you have to fit into somebody else's, aka the algorithms, time frame, schedule, demands in order to keep up with it? And I really just want to offer that you can use social media without falling into those traps of I need to post every day, or I need to, be using the hashtags and, finding the ideal time to post and all of that stuff. You actually can use it in any way that you like. And yes, the algorithm, blah, 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 it's getting harder and harder to be seen for sure, which is why email is so important and having alternative methods is important. But I have to name, I don't know if I'd have a business without Instagram. Is my core truth, and I have found a way to work with it in a way that just feels good to me and liberating. And I absolutely refuse to buy into anyone else's schedules and timelines. I just use it in a way that feels true for me. So I feel like it's not congruent if I don't say that. And yet also highly value, prioritize non-social media forms of growing my business. So we've talked about email. And another one for me is really it's actually been podcasting. So I've had my podcast for 3 years. I remember finishing my first coaching training and declaring as one of my, 5-year goals that we were asked to name, I said I'd like to host a podcast, and it just felt so out of reach. But it was at the point where I decided to take that real leap of faith and put myself literally out there, and to step into my leadership quality, I suppose, of, claiming that, yes, I've got something to talk about, and this is what I want to do with that. So there was a whole mindset thing around it. But for me, starting a podcast has been incredible for my business. You're listening to this podcast right now, which tells me that you appreciate the value of podcasting. And from a business point of view, it's obviously fantastic. You're putting yourself out there as a leader. You are raising your profile. If you're interviewing people and it's not just a one-way transmission, you are networking, you are collaborating, you're having people share your podcast for you. If they're in an episode, they'll share it. People just intrinsically want to share an episode if they've loved it. It's excellent for SEO, so people come through, and find you. If search engine optimization, it does draw people into your podcast. If you host it through your website, if you do use a website, you can put your transcript in there. It absolutely does draw people in. You can offer your links, ask people to follow you or subscribe or work with you or whatever it is. Like, it's just a brilliant way. And because it's a long form content, it's not like, scroll. People are actually really engaged. You have a really powerful way of sharing your heart, sharing that deeper truth of who you are, your storytelling is so important, all of those things. So hosting a podcast has been excellent. But even before hosting a podcast, I would absolutely suggest try and get yourself on other people's podcasts, because then you don't have to go through the work of setting one up. To share a podcast, as I've just said, you can attract people in, but you also are relying on having an existing audience to start listening to it. If you go onto other people's podcasts, you're meeting their audience. You're getting so much exposure as the thought leader on whatever your topic is. You're just getting yourself out there into the big wide world in front of an audience of people who might come and work with you. But I also find people who invite you onto a podcast can be clients as well, because they are obviously interested enough to speak to you and to hear all about what you're doing, and you have a chance to share your work with them. So podcasting, for just so very many reasons, has been really, really wonderful. And I would highly recommend finding podcasts that are aligned, dropping an email, reaching out, asking. So many podcast hosts are always looking for guests. So you're actually doing them a favor. I know I'm always looking for guests. And I love it when somebody who's, wonderful comes through and wants to come on. It's just brilliant. And I also think collaborations. So, whether this is somebody who is in a similar line of work to you or a complementary area of work to you, can be just incredible. So whether you want to run a workshop together or write a blog post for each other, and maybe, cross share or cross pollinate or host it, do a guest blogging, that's another one as well. So writing longer form content, articles, and looking to submit those to online media, traditional media, but just really looking at your network. So I think it's really about networking in all different guises. It can be just really wonderful to, again, in this process, you refine your own voice, you refine your own brand, you refine your own offerings, who you work with, just getting that clarity in your head about how you even explain that, but you're also really putting out your thought leadership into the world. And I've just had so much success with, in so many different ways actually, of just forming connections, meeting people who are really aligned, looking at how we can work together, support each other, whether it's paid, events that we co-host, or whether it's sharing each other's work or contributing content, and, submitting ourselves to print media can be really challenging. especially when starting off. And I think when you've got a higher profile, that can be much easier. So I think to start with, just look at who's around you. Don't be afraid to contact people, form networks, form relationships. Relationships are going to really, really support you. And if you're feeling really hesitant to put yourself out there, that's a whole body of work. So just really look at, what's holding you back from doing that, and really stepping into, actually, you do have value, you do have worth, you have so much to offer. The exact right person's going to hear what you've got to share. And people want to hear from you. Like, that's what you're here to do. So if you're feeling that fear, just really addressing some of those deeper stories about, your visibility as well. And this is something that you're awesome at, Claire. So I want to hear your answer.
I'm making lots of notes while you've been speaking, scribbling things down. You've also really nicely answered another question we had around, self-doubt and putting yourself out there. I think really it just comes down to doing it. Just accepting that it's going to happen. It's definitely going to happen. You're definitely going to feel some comparison or some self-doubt. Your inner critic's going to spark up because it's uncomfortable, and it can feel really scary being visible. Who am I to talk about this? And what if I make a mistake, or I don't know the answer? Or there's so many things that can go on in our heads. Then there's just there is then just the doing. And so much of this, I think, and I think it's actually something we're echoing throughout this conversation, is confidence comes through practice, and it comes through doing something over and over and over and over and over again. Like, there is just magic actually in repeating something and accepting the first time you do it, probably not going to be your best. That's okay. Next, do it again, refine it, reflect, go through that creative cycle over and over and over again. And it does get easier. It doesn't mean that it doesn't sometimes still feel a bit nerve-wracking before speaking on stage or going on a podcast or filming a video. Like, I always get nerves before all of those things. But when you have some embodied experience, some muscle memory that you've done it before and it was okay, the world didn't end, you actually did a great job, you got some good feedback, you felt good in yourself, then it's easier to do it again. So I would just totally underline podcasts. I mean, I've been on lots of other podcasts, and it's always just been very rewarding, whether that's because it's helped me to refine my voice, or whether I've reached a whole new community of people, or both, made great relationships with the host of that podcast. I think that that's a really great place to play. Said email, I think adjacent to that is platforms like Substack or Medium, platforms that are email and article based. But again, that long form writing, having the opportunity to give your community a chance to get to know you on a deeper level, deeper than a 15-second reel can really offer them. So a place where they can really come and spend time with you. YouTube, the same. So maybe if you're somebody who loves speaking, you're quite good with video and lighting, you could start a YouTube channel. And then what's really nice about things like Substack, YouTube, podcasts, is that the offshoots of that can then feed into your social media channel. So you could include a short snippet from a podcast or a YouTube that you've created, or a caption from one of your longer form articles. And that feels really nice to me when I feel like I'm creating more than I'm consuming. So when I know that I'm showing up on social media to create and to share the things that I've been working on in the background, that feels so good to me. When I'm just pouring time and energy into social media and I'm putting hours into one post and then I don't really get a huge engagement, that feels like my soul is slowly draining out of my body. So I think, social media is an incredible tool. Like I don't know if my business would be where it is without it, but let it be the overflow from the other creative projects that you're working on in the background. Include snippets from courses that you've built. Pop like a camera in the corner at a workshop and share some of the footage of you doing your thing. I think, that perspective shift around social media is something that we have to be creating original content for. That might work if you're specifically a content creator, but if it's there as a marketing channel, then how can it just be a reflection of everything else that you're actually already doing in your business? And that's actually quite easy to do. And that is the kind of stuff that you can outsource. You could say to some, pay a VA to come and help you pick out those really great snippets from a podcast interview that you've done as your voice, but somebody else is doing the labor of actually, finding that 30-second, moment and then sharing it onto your channels. I would also say I had the experience last year of helping a friend do some in-person workshops in London. And what I found actually to be really helpful with the in-person element was local WhatsApp groups. So WhatsApp is huge in the UK, and so there's a lot of WhatsApp groups for specific communities. And so often when there's like a festival that happens, there'll be a WhatsApp group that's set up for everyone who's going to that, or there'll be specific WhatsApp groups set up for specific interests. And so I'm in a number of these different WhatsApp groups. It was a more like kind of a personal development, spiritual, conscious sexuality events. I was in a lot of WhatsApp groups that were related to those areas. And so sharing events in those groups actually gained a lot of traction and interest. And I would also say the same for Facebook groups. I know that that's still technically social media, but I think that there's still some power in Facebook groups that are localized to a local area, and also Facebook events that can also be targeted to local areas. So I do get ads sometimes on Facebook like, hey, you live in Oxford, you might be interested in this talk by this person. And I'm like, yes, actually, I would be interested in that because they've created that event. So it's not that someone's having to show up on social media, it's just they've created that event. So I think there are lots of other ways to communicate outside of social media. Like you said, interview series, collaborating, they're all, finding your audience, which is another question that we had. You don't necessarily have to make the audience from scratch. Those people are already out there. They're already a part of other communities and groups. So how can you put yourself in front of them? How can you collaborate with the people who are already serving those groups? How can you bring your unique brand of magic and value to those spaces? You don't have to individually find people one by one to try to build this community. They're there already. So you just need to find ways to, to offer your services, your value, your magic. Try different things, see what works for you. Yeah. All right. We have got
Amazing.
Couple more, so let's keep going with these final questions now. Question around managing slow days, which I really like, and I really want us to touch on this. We've talked about the fire and the hard work and the being intentional with our time, and then I'd love for us to speak to the reality of what happens when you wake up and you're exhausted, or you just don't feel like you have so much in the tank. Maybe, for those, neurodivergent among us, like your brain isn't always in gear. For a lot of us at different points in the cycle, there are just some phases where we're not on. So then what happens? How do you approach those slow days?
This is a gorgeous question. This is like so far up my alley. It's ridiculous because I think it ties in somewhat to what I've shared about mothering, where like for me in my reality, that's one of those demands where I'm like, okay, I just cannot work today for whatever reason, or I don't have the capacity right now. It can show up absolutely in certain phases of my menstrual cycle. It can even show up mid-cycle where I'm like, supposedly full of beans and I'm like, just can't. So, there's been, last week my kids went back to school. All three of them were in for one day. And then this week was like my first proper week. It's Thursday now, so I've had Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and I've barely worked. And I just really needed that space this week to honor that transition back in rather than going full steam ahead, like all guns blazing. I just felt tired. And, it wasn't a slow day. It's been like a slow week, full week. So I could fight that. I could try and force myself. I could sit at my desk. I'd end up banging my head on it from frustration because it's like you're just not there. So instead I just gave myself grace and said, you know what, it's not going to happen. I'm currently doing a training that requires me to be in deep ceremonial sacred space at 5 a.m. And I'm finding that, I come upstairs afterwards and my kids are ready for school or getting ready for school. It's go, 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 go. And then I get home again and I'm exhausted. And not because, 5 a.m. is early, but it's not even that. It's the energy draw of that. And doing a lot of inner work. It's very, intensive. And I've just had to accept that actually on those days I cannot work actually without going back to bed and having a nap. So again, there's just so many things in my life right now which are really diminishing my capacity, and I'm having a lot of slow days. And so it's just honoring where I'm at, prioritizing like what's important to me. Is it smashing it out and being hyper productive all the time, you know, being busy for the sake of being busy even if I'm not actually producing my best work? Or is it slowing down, stepping away, knowing that replenishing my energy, doing something that genuinely revitalizes me, whether that's a swim in the river or a nap, or you know, I'm also taking Monday mornings to work with my friend from a cafe, which actually looks like chatting for 2 hours over tea. And I'm like, wow, I'm really not getting much work done at the minute, but that's where I'm at right now. This winter season has just been really about being present with myself and letting go of expectations, perceptions of busyness. And actually, this has come up with a lot of my clients too. It's really funny. This has really been coming up. And I just keep guiding myself and them back to, isn't this actually what it's all about? Isn't this the measure of success? Isn't this the freedom that we are trying to create? So then receive it instead of pushing it away and going, I should be whatever. Like, just honor that. Like, that's what we're trying to do, I believe. I think that's a core, I'm feeling into that's a core value for those of us listening and in this space, is that we want to have that capacity and adaptability and flexibility and freedom to just not be exchanging money for time and pouring everything out. We want to be receiving as well. And that's like being able to do that. That is the gift. That is the privilege. That is what it's, for me, that's what it's about. So reminding myself of that allows me to accept and take a deep exhale and go, yeah, actually, that's bloody brilliant. That's not a problem. That's the goal.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah. Yeah, for me, those days are permission to be cozy, permission to move slowly, permission to accept that nothing is actually really that urgent. And often it's just in my head or in my inbox that I think that things are more urgent than they are. Something I've been doing recently is sending an email that perhaps someone's asked something of me, someone's requested something, or there's an assessment I need to respond to, or moment, for example, we have applications coming in for the training, and say I thought in my head, right, I'm going to do those on Monday. And then I get to Monday and I'm like, oh, I don't think that's going to happen, or at least not all of this. I have a habit of underestimating how long things actually take. And so something I've been playing with is just, it sounds so simple, but just sending an email and letting people know, hey, this is going to take a little bit longer than expected. You'll hear from me, later in the week. This might sound very obvious to some people, but actually for me, that's been such a gift, is just giving myself permission to say, hey, I need a little bit longer. There's also something in there around being more realistic with my time commitments, which is something I'm working on personally as well. But not everything has to happen right away, and it's not out of integrity to say, hey, I just need a little bit more time, particularly if we're able to let people know, especially if somebody's waiting to hear back from us, or we're collaborating with somebody on a project, then just ask for some grace and some space and a little bit more time, and usually it's okay. So there's something just really nice about like a pajama day with your laptop on the couch. If there are some things that this is actually what I want to prioritize today, and I would feel really good if I got to the end of this slow day having completed this one task, then how can it feel so yummy and cozy? I love what you said about having tea with a girlfriend. that's a great idea. Or just like playing some really nice music, or having a TV show on in the background, or having a really yummy lunch, or a lovely cup of tea, turning some music on. Like, particularly when we work from home, we have at our fingertips all of these delights, these sensual delights that can also make those slow days still feel really gentle, while ensuring that we're staying devoted to the thing that feels important to complete. Timers are useful in this sense then, right? I'm going to do 90 minutes on this task, but this is important. Set the timer and then walk away afterwards.
I just really want to add in there, if that's okay, Claire, just the sense of like, if you have a client and you're in this energy and it's like, I can't cancel, I have to show up. Something that really supports me is just honoring the energy that I'm in. So not feeling like I need to show up to a client in like peak inner summer, like, all bells and whistles and singing and dancing all the time. It's like just really honoring wherever I'm at with that client and trusting that like I'm not going to show up and be like half asleep on them, but I can be, if I'm feeling slow, then I can welcome that slowness as a real gift to the client actually, and hold space for them from that place. Like, what's it like? How am I a different coach in each phase of my cycle? How can I not deny or like suppress my true energy, but like how can I work with that? And it might mean that I see the client I have to see, and then I, don't do much or nothing, maybe even do nothing around that, or just build an extra buffer time. But just being true to who we are and allowing that to be, perhaps a real gift that the client needed as well. Maybe that's something that they will really benefit from in our softness or in our more intuitive state, and access to, other senses, that slowness, that space that we can give them to, I like to do guided meditations for a client if they're bleeding, for example, to honor their slowness, so we're not so cerebral or like nutting out things or planning things through, or having a, much of a conversation. We might not say that much at all, but it'd be much more slower and intuitive. So just offering that as well, that it might not be you need to just scrap your whole day. It might be that you need that buffer time in the morning to just really drop into your feminine first before you then show up and do whatever. The amount of working from bed days I've had this winter has been delightful. Days where I've not got dressed and I've not even had a wash, and I will just like have my breakfast and cacao in bed with a candle and my duvet, and I've actually been really productive once I've just let myself do that. I think it's be wherever you're at and just honor whatever you need.
Absolutely.
Add that in.
Yeah, I'm really glad you did. I think this is really a beautiful example of how menstrual cycle awareness teaches us how to embrace those slow days in our lives, embrace those slow phases in our lives, and to learn to value that energy. Like you say, we don't always have to show up in this like superwoman, extroverted, outgoing, smiley, happy dance, because that's one aspect of who we are. It's one dimension, but it doesn't tell the full story. And this work is about embracing our full spectrum selves and creating spaces where we allow other people to do the same. So if we can be more transparent with the people that we're working with about the place that we're in, and just allow that energy to be present and presence it if that feels good for you. Of course, we don't want to go into a story, but it's perfectly okay to say to somebody like, as you're doing your check-in at the beginning, like I'm noticing like there's a lot of like softness in my energy today. Like, what are you noticing and feeling? And allowing that to be present in a group space, in a client space, and really celebrating it, noticing the value that it brings. I've often found myself bleeding when teaching group workshops in person. It just seems to be a pattern for me, and it's been such a great, right? It's been such a great lesson to learn that I can absolutely hold space when I'm bleeding. And actually there's this beautiful power of this like priestess energy that comes in, and it's very centered and it's very womby and it's a bit voidy and spacey, but it's like it's really powerful actually. And so learning how to hold myself in that offers a really beautiful transmission to the group, creates permission for them, and then I go home and I don't really do anything after that. But like, you know, I think it's such a beautiful practice to notice, on those soft, slow days, it's possible, you know, and notice the stories that might come in to say that you can't do something or that, you know, you're not able to do something, and just be really curious about what's actually going on there. Yeah, I think this is actually a really nice place for us to end this conversation, because I actually want to finish on this note of softness and gentleness amidst the fire and the hard work and the persistence that building a business takes. There is so much room also for these threads of gentle curiosity and the void, and for spaciousness, and for being open to the mystery as well, because like you say, who knows, that could be exactly the energy that person needs that you're collaborating with that day, is for you to show up more vulnerable, more soft, more open. It's very beautiful.
I love that too. And I feel like, you know, when you just said there about that priestessy energy, it's like, I think when we can hold space sometimes, and maybe when you're starting out as well, there's that story of I need to know what I'm saying, I need to have it all figured out, I need to be quite, you know, switched on in my head. And those times where we're just like, actually our thoughts are not as clear, whether it's executive functioning that's not there, whether you're bleeding and you're kind of off in another realm, like just let yourself be the channel. Like, I just think this has been a real practice for me, and it's taken actually some time to really trust. And I wish I'd recognized that sooner, because we have so much power within us when we just speak from a place of empty presence, and we just open up to what wants to come through, and we can express something that we didn't even know was there. We just sense what the other person, if it's one-on-one or the group, like responding to the group, flowing with the group, what wants to come through. And we don't have to do it from that place of efforting and struggle or kind of pressure to have it all scripted or nutted out or have the exact right thing that we know to say at that time. It's like when we're just with what's there and just let it come through, we can do that from such a place of softness and presence, and that can be just the most powerful thing that we can offer in the moment to ourselves and to them, and to give that permission that, you know, all parts of us are just as valid and beautiful and important, and that's what reclaiming the cycle is.
Yeah, so good. Thank you so much, Charlotte. I have so much gratitude and appreciation and admiration for you in work, in life, and also right now for giving us so much of your time and sharing so transparently. There's so much gold in the conversations that we've had. One absolute final question I have for you is, are you reading or watching anything great right now that you could share with our listeners? Something that's captured your imagination or attention?
No, I have a really interesting relationship with books and TV, where if I start something, I absolutely fall into a rabbit hole, disappear to another realm, cannot put it down. My whole life falls apart because I am like hyper fixated on that thing. And so I have to be really discerning and careful with when I like watch TV or read a book. And I have to actually make sure I have the time and the space and the capacity for it. It's just something that I've really learned is true for me, because, you know, I binge. I either don't watch TV and then I will start something and I absolutely binge it in like no time, and it's just not good for my health. So that is true. Not that I'm reading as such, but I'm doing some study at the moment on priestess training, priestess temple guide training. And there's so much richness in there. There's not books as such, but that's where I'm putting my kind of, it's a bit more study, but it's like receiving a lot as well. So I feel like that is the closest thing to what I'm doing at the moment, and it's just nourishing me so much.
Yeah, beautiful. Another thread of curiosity to follow, hey?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to seeing where that takes you and how you integrate that work into your existing body of work. Thank you so much for being here. And can people find you and learn more about the work that you share in the world?
Thank you. So for those on Instagram, you might want to come to find me. I'm charlotte.pointeaux.coach. And if you're not, or if you want to see more broadly about what I've got available and just more about my breadth of my work, my website is charlottepointeaux.com, and I'm sure you'll write that down so that people who are like, how do you spell that? It'll be there. Yeah, I have a podcast that Claire has been a guest on as well. We had a beautiful conversation about the Enchantress. That's called Wild Flow, and that's all conversations related to cyclical wisdom. And right now, two things that I'm really working on, particularly in the online space. We've got the First Moon Circle Facilitator training, which is all about working with young people and supporting them to be empowered and prepared and confident, supported for their puberty and menarche, rites of passage experience, and just cycle awareness. So it's how to do all of that with young people. And then the other thing that I've been really following, this thread of what has been coming to me through clients, through doing this shamanic work, is on the other side of that deep inquiry is, okay, well, who am I here to be in the world, and how do I express myself, and how do I actually create the business that supports me in that process. So I've created, it's called the Cyclical Business Mastermind, and it's a really beautiful, intimate space for women who aren't necessarily menstrual cycle coaches, but are doing holistic women's empowerment work, kind of, in maybe various healing modalities, and online or in person. But it's really about doing this business work, but from not a linear capitalist patriarchal kind of point of view that's about hustle, the ways that a lot of us, when we're trying to grow a business, we end up looking to people who are going to encourage us to work in ways that don't suit us when we're trying to really honor our cycles. So I've created this to really hold us in both of the kind of, I guess, the masculine elements of the things we've been talking about, like what do we need to do, what are some of the strategies, and what's that kind of process look like, but also in that feminine energy of like we are honoring our capacity, working with our cycle, all of that goodness. So that's something else that I'm offering as well. So if there's something in there for you, come check it out.
so much in there, and we'll include all of those links in the show notes so you can find it all there. Charlotte, thank you so much again. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always just such a beautiful, magical thing to spend time with you, Claire. And thank you everyone for listening.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Cycle Coach Show. If you loved what you heard, then please review, share, and subscribe to help us reach more cyclical listeners like you. You can find us on Instagram at Cycle Coach School or online at cyclecoachtraining.com.